what did Sephiroth say to the party when they first fight Jenova on the boat? Is he talks about how Jenova can take the image of things you love, those you hate, and those you fear. So it's three things. And what are potentially the three instances where Jenova shows up? Sephiroth is the one you hate. Glenn is the one Rufus fears, and Aerith is the one you love.
I didn't pick up on it like at first, like because the first time you watch it, you're kind of confused. You're like, wait, is she alive? Is she dead? Is Cloud actually seeing Aerith in the live stream? Or I didn't pick up on the fact that it might be Jenova until like a second time you're watching it and being like, okay, what's really happening here?
What's up, dudes? Today I have a very special video. I brought my friend Drake Cummings on the stream, and we discussed the ending of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, sharing our opinions, our theories. This came from almost 14 hours worth of streams we did just talking about this one game. So I just decided to post the ending discussions first. But if you like this discussion, please let me know, and I can work on posting the rest of the discussion. It might be the longest podcast ever recorded about Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, so I'm really excited to post this. And let me know what you guys think happened at the end of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. I'm always open to know any ideas and theories. I'm dying to read anything for this incredible game. So here it is, me and Drake Cummings' discussion of the ending of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. We're about to yap, dude, because we're back. Rebirth podcast part 69. I don't know. How many parts have we done, dude?
I think this is part 4.
Part 4 of four 4-hour podcasts, pretty much.
Yeah. Well, this one shouldn't be 4 hours. Like this one, we only have one cutscene and to talk about. So
should we?
We have one cutscene and predictions, so it shouldn't be 4 hours.
You never know. Yeah, how things went last time, but I think the main thing that we fleshed out in our last discussion was the whispers, and their intentions that are seemingly happening moment to moment, is what I was noticing.
Yeah. We well, we were talking about the final boss fight and stuff at the end. Yeah, boy, was. We were talking about, but yeah, we can pick it up from there. The whispers, like I feel like we're gonna understand the white and black whispers a lot more in part 3, because they kind of like pulled there's 2 different whispers. Like it seemed, I think then they introduced the white whispers right here. Like, isn't this like they kind of pulled this at very close to the end?
They introduced the white whispers when Tifa went in the live stream.
Oh,
so when Tifa went in the live stream, that's where Tifa witnessed a conflict. There's this almost spiritual conflict happening between Sephiroth and the planet, essentially. And what it seems like to me, and visually with this scene is what's going on, is that Sephiroth is taking the worlds, all these worlds that are dying, and he's sucking up the planet's energy, because essentially these are planets' fates. So he's taking other planets' fate, right? The planet's energy, and he's taking control of these whispers. Now, one thing I did notice visually is that these whispers, if I'm not mistaken, they look a little different than the ones in Remake, because the eyes look a little bit more purplish. Then Remake, they're white. I think the eyes, I'll have to go look in Remake's whispers, but they look even though they're the same, they're black, the light that they project in that orb is a different light than the ones in Remake. So it's almost as if that these are being controlled by Sephiroth almost.
Yeah, I think so. I think the ones in Remake essentially like are destroyed when they break fate, and then these are like, I think all the whispers we see here are like technically different. Like I think they serve either Sephiroth for the planet or something. I think the other ones served like fate, like they served like in Marvel terminology like the sacred timeline, and then when that's destroyed, I think like these now serve like they no longer serve fate, they serve like the different interests that are at war here.
Yeah. Because it's interesting how, yeah, the white ones were keeping them occupied, and then the black ones won that fight there. They blocked the party, but they let Cloud in. So now that Cloud's in, the white and the black whispers up ahead are just kind of in chaos as he's walking up to, see, because they're both pushing him. So it's almost as if the planet and maybe Planet and Sephiroth both want her to pray. It's almost like they both are wanting the same thing here. So it's as if Sephiroth and the planet kind of want this part to happen. But other parts, they're in conflict. But this part, they're both seeming like they want the same thing. Like, okay, we need this to happen. And then we need this event to occur. So each scene is different intentions.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see reasons why Sephiroth and the planet. Oh, sorry, I'm yawning. I apologize.
No, it's okay.
I'll kind of stop as we keep talking. Yeah, no, I can see reasons why both of them would want this to happen. Like, it's kind of like a motivating factor. It could be a motivating factor for either thing. Like, Sephiroth's death Aerith's death is like a way that Sephiroth can use to kind of further control Cloud. But then also, Aerith returning to the life stream is also, maybe there's some things that she can only do from the life streams. Like maybe having her return is like beneficial to the planet. So I kind of feel like, it's both the planet and Sephiroth probably want this to happen for different reasons.
Right. And the one thing I noticed is that it's Cloud pushed away both the white and black whispers here, but now the black whispers are so Cloud just pushed away both, and now the black whispers are in control of that space. It's kind of interesting. And then brutal. Yeah, we were talking about the reaction of this scene last time, just the sort of the bait and switch.
Yeah, so do you think that he actually stopped the blade right here, or do you think that's just what he wants to believe that he did?
I think that it's so hard to say what actually happened. I think, to me, the intention of the director and the writer is that this scene is intentionally confusing. They want to confuse the player because Cloud is confused. So they're putting, for better or for worse, the storytelling purpose of this entire section is in the perspective of Cloud and his confusion and sort of his denial. So I think a lot of red herrings and clues are thrown at you to sort of confuse you and to... Maybe this is a meta storytelling of them being like, oh, you thought you, the player, was going to save Aerith? Really? No. This is how it's really... Even him blocking the sword, she's still going to die. And that's almost even more of a brutal idea. Where it's like, they're telling the player, even though Cloud blocked the sword, she still dies. And it's almost... It's jarring, but it kind of makes it more rough to take because the player is like, wait, but he stopped it. What's going on? So I think that's the intention from a sort of a filmmaking perspective, what they're doing. But as far as like what is actually happening, I got no idea. Honestly, I think I understand it from a filmmaking perspective of what the intention they're trying to do, but as far as like what is actually happening here, I don't really have a grasp.
So I noticed like when he blocks the sword, it kind of has that rainbow light similar to when Zack makes a decision. In the tunnel. But I think like the through line that like even though that light was shown to like show that Zack like made a decision, so like one of the I think when we first see that scene where Zach makes a decision and we see the rainbow light coming from the other end of the tunnel, I think that's maybe meant to. We originally think that that is a sign that he has made like a choice that's affecting the timeline. But
Mm-hmm.
I think that in hindsight, the light is showing that like the timeline is correcting itself to compensate for Zach's choice, because we find out that no matter what, Zach always dies. And
Right.
so I think same thing here. Like no matter what Cloud chooses, Aerith always dies. So even though it looks like he made a choice, it's the timeline's got to recorrect. So
Right.
whether he blocks the blade or not, from his perspective, she still gets hit. Yeah, and I think it's just like that's where we start seeing a lot of flashing, like the static kind of glitches in and out. And I really think that like it's fluctuating between like what he sees and what actually happened.
Right.
I've seen some breakdowns where it's like when we're like it's switching timelines, and when it like scratches, it's showing the original timeline. But I actually think it's just like it's kind of showing the reality versus like his perception of like what's going on.
Yeah, yeah, that could be that could be interesting. I think the Cloud's denial, because there's and we'll talk about this when we watch the closing credits. But what's really interesting about the closing credits is that they show every single cutscene in the game except for all of these cutscenes, and then they show Aerith looking away at the airship when she's standing there saying goodbye, looking up at the airship. And what's interesting about that is my interpretation of the ending is that this is like the last when Aerith right here, this is the goodbye with Cloud. This is Aerith saying goodbye to Cloud here, and that's it. That's the and then there's Omni Aerith, that boss fight. That's sort of like a
different person,
that's Omni Aerith, but this is like the Aerith saying goodbye. And so all the Aeriths after is this sort of bizarre Genova thing happening. So what's interesting about the closing cutscenes is all of these it's funny, they have the credits rolling, and then they have the places where the cutscenes are, and there's this whole section for 2 minutes where there's no cutscenes at all that they show, and then they show the final cutscene where Aerith looks at the plane, which kind of seems like they're saying, oh, all this stuff didn't happen the way we showed it. So it's like, because it's all Cloud's perspective. So all those cutscenes that were in Cloud's perspective, they didn't even show in the closing credits. And they showed every other cutscene, like clips of every other cutscene.
That's such a cool detail. I did not pick up on that. That's a good
so,
good noticing.
Yeah, that was someone on Twitter posted that, and it went viral. So a lot of Final Fantasy people were talking about, like, wait, this guy discovered this, and so I watched it. I was like, oh, that makes sense. It's all the scenes that were in Cloud's perspective. So I feel that Sephiroth's intentions, he's like really a conniving villain. He's very smart, and makes decisions on the fly. Even though he has a master plan, I feel he can on the fly switch his game up to see how he can use this situation. So any new situation, let's say Aerith wins, he can use that and be like, oh, you're going to do this? Well, I got an idea on how to really F this up. Like this scene, Sephiroth is like, you're in denial, and he splatters the blood on his face. Like,
right, yeah.
I killed her, dude. You're in denial. And so in the fight, Cloud's in denial because he doesn't have a limit break. He is just...
That's a really cool detail I didn't pick up on either.
So he does not have a limit break in the final fight. Everyone else has a limit break because they just saw Aerith die.
Because they're so angry, yeah.
But Cloud is so fucked up that he doesn't have a limit break because he's just like in this denial phase. And Sephiroth needs Cloud to be broken so he can completely control him. And so Sephiroth has like, okay, I got to do a lot of work here to figure this one out. So by the end, with that idea, I'll show you this scene with Aerith's fight. At the end of this scene, they beat Sephiroth. And he starts flying away. Where are we at the end here? Yeah. Why is he laughing? So, coming back to that point, Cloud's flying away here. Or Sephiroth's flying away. And he's looking down at Cloud and Aerith together. And Cloud's in full belief at this point that Aerith's alive. So Sephiroth's laughing at them because he knows he can use this to his advantage. And what happens right after this is a bizarre Aerith showing up. So at this moment, Sephiroth's like, "Ha! I got you, bitch." Oh, you think you saved your girlfriend? Oh, really? Okay. I'm going to use this to my advantage. So I feel the Jenova theory plays out with this scene because he just laughs. He's like, "Ha!" And then Cloud's like, "Why is he laughing?" And Aerith's like, "Well, he's Sephiroth, dude."
Right.
And so that's kind of how I feel about these things. But this is also very reminiscent of, I think, the final scene in Advent Children. Similar goodbye with Aerith, I think. I think this is the same shot, right? Isn't there a shot with Cloud in white saying bye to Aerith or something where Aerith disappears?
Yeah, you're right. There totally is, yeah.
So this is almost like a second goodbye here. Because this is a very... Like, she's disappearing into the live stream here. She's turning into live stream and disappearing. And so for her to show up after this is really bizarre.
Yeah, so I think that I don't think that's actually Aerith that he's seeing. I think it's Jenova manipulating its essence to appear to him as. I think he's the only one who sees her. I think it's the Jenova cells in his blood and his DNA just being manipulated into seeing what Jenova wants him to see, which is Aerith. Or whether that's Jenova or Sephiroth. Yeah, I don't think that the Aerith we see in the final cutscene is actually Aerith. I think he's going to constantly be talking to her, and no one else is going to see her.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Red is going to be the first one who picks up on the fact that Cloud's talking to nobody, because Red and Aerith had a really close relationship in this.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think he's going to be the first one to sniff out that yo, dude, I don't know who you're talking to, but it's not Aerith. If it was Aerith talking to you through the live stream, I'd be able to see it too, because of my connection with the live stream. And so if I'm not seeing her, it's that's a you thing, which is it's not her.
Right. Now, one piece of info though that is interesting is that during the trials of where they go in their personal trials, everyone except Cloud went through that. In Red 13's flashback, he was experimented on by Hojo. So it's interesting how they put that scene there to make it really obvious that Hojo experimented on Red 13. So it's possible that Red 13 has Jenova cells. He's the only other character that has them. So that's why in the closing cutscene, he senses Aerith, but not Tifa. Which is, we'll watch the cutscene how it's really bizarre. How if Tifa is the only character other than Aerith that's been in the live stream, essentially, that has a connection, has an actual connection to the live stream. So it's interesting how Aerith shows next to Red, but Tifa doesn't notice. Tifa has no awareness. So yeah, but that's jumping ahead a little bit.
Yeah, interesting. I'm interested to rewatch that cutscene because I've watched it a couple times after I finished it, but I haven't watched it since we had this talk, or since we've had our talks, and I don't remember Red noticing her. So it's that's a cool detail you picked up on. Yeah, I never even thought about that Red could have some, because he doesn't have Genova cells in the original, right? Like, or at least if he does, they never
Well,
mention that.
they don't really, they're really elaborated on in this specific game. Showing the Red 13 stuff, because what happens in the original Final Fantasy VII is that by default, when you're in the Northern Crater, Cloud gives the materia to Red 13 to hold on to while they go and search for Sephiroth. So when Sephiroth takes total control over Cloud, Cloud lies to Red 13 to get back the black materia. So he lies to him and to get it back. So probably they're setting this up for the same thing to happen in part 3, to where maybe Red 13 is gonna get Aerith to be like, hey, give me the black materia, or hey, give Cloud the black materia because blah 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 blah. Like something might happen with Red 13 where he gets lied to by the Genova Aerith. So maybe that's why they're setting up in the closing cutscene where he senses her to lead in, to plant the seed, so that way the scene in the Northern Crater would make sense. Maybe they're writing it in a way where Aerith is a central figure in that part.
That could make sense. Yeah, it's kind of like the way they changed the Kate Sif thing a little bit, like to just make it like feel more natural or make more sense in the story. I could see that. So okay, before we get to that, I guess we have this scene right here where the boss fight's finished. Everyone is Vincent doesn't give a fuck about what's going on. He's like, I didn't know that girl.
Yeah.
Everyone else is sad. Vincent's like, I don't know who you people. I haven't learned your names yet. But everyone else is really sad because they saw what actually happened.
Right.
And then Cloud is just like not processing what transpired.
He's just chilling. He's chilling. And, you know, again, with the whole scene being perspective of Cloud, we were robbed of one of the most iconic scene directions in gaming, which is Cloud releasing Aerith into the water.
Oh yeah,
so as gamers, as fans, we were kind of robbed of that. However, that scene, that's why I'm thinking in the third game when Sephiroth starts to go to and be like to completely break Cloud, I think he's gonna force Cloud to watch what happened. He's gonna be like, okay, you dumb bitch. Here's what actually happened. So he's gonna use Genova to have Aerith appear in front of him, but at the same time, he's gonna tell him the truth and be like, "You actually killed." Or did you say this in one of our first discussions, where you think was it you that said that you thought that Sephiroth was gonna maybe convince Cloud that maybe he killed Aerith instead of Sephiroth?
Oh. No, I didn't say that, but I like that.
Oh, yeah. At I think that was an idea where that would maybe be something used where it's like, because everyone's like confused at what happened. So maybe Sephiroth makes the whole party believe that he killed Aerith and not.
Ooh.
That'd be really brutal if that theory played out.
Yeah, especially if he keeps kind of going down the like a darker Spider-Man 2 black symbiote materia path,
right?
And it's like it kind of like adds credence to the idea that like Cloud could be that violent, especially because he tried to kill Tifa like twice at this point,
right?
But yeah, like I definitely think we will see that scene. I think we'll see the stabbing, and I think we'll see the release in the water, like in part 3 as like a flashback where like when Cloud finally sees the truth. It
would be insane if that was the opening of the game. Like if they show it, I think
they would keep it for like a dramatic reveal, like maybe halfway through or like close to the end. But I'm reminded of Final Fantasy 16. It never ceases to It'll just be funny to me. It's like press R3 to reveal the truth, to accept the truth.
Oh,
Do you remember that? Do you remember pressing R3
oh
to
my
accept the truth?
God. People were, it was hilarious when the game came out and people were saying, this is not my Final Fantasy. And it's like, dude, did you get to the part where you literally have a boss fight with yourself? That's the most Final Fantasy shit you could possibly put in a game. It's a boss fight. Wait, it's actually, I'm fighting myself. I was like, this is the most Final Fantasy shit to ever happen. And the whole villain, the villain is the most Final Fantasy ass villain with the most Final Fantasy ass intentions. And the most, just, it's sort of like it's like, this is the most Final Fantasy villain. It's like existence. It's like, oh, quasi-religious themes and all this stuff. It's like, that is so Final Fantasy, dude. That is the essence. Like a Final Fantasy game.
Super Final Fantasy by the end. But yeah, like, and I love that scene too. It was really powerful, but I just thought it was really funny. Just press R3 to accept the truth. It's almost like
I hope that's on. Or I always say this, this game has the most dramatic quick time event where it's like you press the LR button to turn in the beginning in the flashback where Cloud's turning the wheel while Sephiroth's losing it in the that was I always laugh when I say, because he's just turning this wheel and you know Sephiroth's losing it in the other room, just like oh my God, I'm created and we're just out here turning a wheel.
Well, so also like that during that whole time, I'm just like, because Genesis, as we've talked about, is not in this game, but like canonically he would be in that scene, like he would be in the other room. So I just pictured like I'm turning this, and Genesis is like a character Cloud doesn't know is like popping in, talking to Sephiroth, and then just like dipping before I have a chance to like finish turning this like crank.
Is he in that scene in Crisis Core? Did he show up there? Oh my God.
Which is why I was like, how are we not going to see him? But I was like, okay, like, I wonder if we will see him when we see the real scene. I was like, if there's ever a chance to sew Genesis and to make sense, it would be there, because he is there. He shows up and he talks to Sephiroth. I don't know if Zack sees, the thing is, I don't know if anyone but Sephiroth sees him, though. I think it might happen while everyone else is just conveniently in a different room,
right?
For like, so it doesn't break canon with like, because they obviously they made him up for Crisis Core, so it's like they're like, oh, how do we have him in the scene, but explain why we've never shown him before? And it's like, because I think the only one who knew he was there was Sephiroth, but I don't remember exactly.
I think, that'll be. I definitely think Genesis is going to be next. They're gonna have all the characters in the game, and I think saying this the last time, I think they're going to resolve all of Advent Children characters, Crisis Core, and Dirge. They're closing the book on all of those plots, because this is going to be the good ending, essentially. And it's going to be, I think that's ultimately where this is going to go. However they do it, I think it's closing the book on the entire, they're not going to be like, we're ending it here, and then we're going to go remake Dirge of Cerberus. I don't think that's what they're going to do. What they're going to do is they're going to maybe make another Vincent game, but it's going to be a completely separate story. Like everything happening after is going to be different from Advent Children, because Advent Children and all this stuff is going to literally be a part of the ending of the third game.
It's like the bad timeline.
It's closing the book on the Cloud story and Aerith and Zack, but you could, if they could definitely make future games that they want with Vincent and all the other characters, but I think this is supposed to be their send-off of Cloud and Aerith, essentially.
So, okay, I think this might be a good time for you to explain, like, in full, pretend I don't, because I understand a little bit about how this is a sequel, but, like, pretend I don't know that this is a sequel at all. Can you explain how Remake and Rebirth are a sequel to the original game and the original chronology?
The hints are in Advent Children, where Sephiroth, even though Sephiroth was defeated in the original game, he is alive. He will always be alive. Sephiroth is anything associated with Genova. They're essentially alive in those cells, in the memories too. I think in Advent Children it talks about memories. I'm in Cloud's memory. So as long as Sephiroth is in Cloud's memory, Sephiroth essentially exists in one way or another. So it's sort of, and there's this book that was written, I think, a long time ago, where it talks about how Aerith and Sephiroth are in the life stream as sort of like the Force. It's almost like a Star Wars thing where Sephiroth represents the bad force, Aerith represents the good force. So Sephiroth kind of, even though he died, he essentially has achieved immortality. The way he was reborn through Genova, and he's alive through the memories of Cloud. It's a little confusing, but that's just the setup to the main theory of Remake being a sequel, because Sephiroth is essentially, you brought this up in the last episode, he's basically the reversed Doctor Strange, where he's trying to find the world in which he wins. And so he comes back and shows up at the beginning to where Aerith is looking in the very opening of the game. In the original, Aerith looks at the live stream seeping out of this pipe of materia, because she senses the planet, and then the camera goes back and goes straight to the train. Remake is different. She looks at the pipe, and then she looks and notices that she senses Sephiroth's presence. So even though she has never met Sephiroth, she doesn't know who he is at all. She still, at that moment, knows Sephiroth's here. So she's seemingly aware of events in the future that have already happened. So this is essentially, I'm just saying, stating as fact, but it's still a theory at this point, because it's still not clearly defined in Rebirth. It's not like set in stone that this is a sequel. But seemingly Aerith at that moment in the beginning of the game is very aware of events that have happened in the future. The way she's reacting, the way she's talking, about, there's a dream sequence with Cloud in the middle of the game where she's seemingly aware of the future. Very bizarre dialogue.
Yeah, I don't wait to see
and then Cloud has a literal vision of the future of Aerith dying whenever they're on the way to Wall Market. He has this, Sephiroth shows up, and then he starts crying, and it's like they showed Aerith death scene. So he's seeing this stuff, and he's crying. He's like, why am I crying? So there's always hints saying that in Remake that the events, even though it's like it's time travel, but it's almost as if everything has already happened in Sephiroth's existence. Everything has happened.
I see.
And so essentially it's Sephiroth trying to figure out how to win.
So Sephiroth is essentially time traveled but also time travel to a different timeline.
Right.
Early enough where it's like he could still make a change. He could still maybe win in this timeline.
Right.
But his consciousness has already lived through the events of the original Final Fantasy VII, and then he traveled back in time to a different timeline where things are just different enough where he could potentially win. Right.
So he is. Okay. So he is. Because and at the end of Rebirth, we're seeing how many worlds are being destroyed. Zack's world's getting destroyed. Zack's fighting Sephiroth with Meteor literally behind him. So Sephiroth is taking control of all these whispers, and he's essentially winning all of these battles in these other worlds. He's merging all these destroyed worlds into one super power. So he's slowly taking control of everything. So this is the timeline where the party has to stop him. And that's why I think this is why this particular multiverse gimmick works in this particular game, because there's actual stakes.
Yeah.
There's stakes. You feel that even though it's like they can't just jump into some other timeline to, you know, like, oh, there's someone else over here. It's written in a way where it still maintains the emotional weight because fate is very important. All the fates of the characters end up being the same. Aerith always dies. Even in that dream world, Aerith seemingly dies. Where Sephiroth just comes in the church. That's pretty much she's dead.
Yeah.
She's pretty much dead.
Yeah.
And now, as far as to what it all means in the end, it's still up in the air and like what's going to happen. But it's I hope that that kind of breaks it down as to like explaining like it's
that makes sense to me. Yeah, I was winning this kind of understanding, but like that now makes perfectly clear sense to me. It's like I feel like that's a valid explanation.
So that's why I feel that since it is a sequel in the sense that he's trying to course correct everything. That's why the events of Advent Children and Dirge of Cerberus won't necessarily happen after the end of this game, because this is
that makes sense.
It's confusing to think about, but it does make sense. Where even though technically the events of Advent Children have not happened yet, it has happened already per Aerith and Sephiroth already. They've already experienced all this stuff. And there's lines of dialogue that Aerith say because it won't make sense for Aerith to be aware of the whole game, right? It's going to be bizarre. She's just going to be too weird to the party if she is aware of the future. So how they wrote that to remove that is that the Whispers were removing her memories every time that the Whispers touch her, because she's too aware. So in the beginning of the game, she's almost as if she is completely aware, because it also alludes to the very closing shot of Final Fantasy VII, the original, is Aerith. It's the same shot of Aerith looking at the pipe in Midgar. It's the same.
Right.
So it's in the original games just showing that Aerith is the one that saved everybody. What I'm wondering is if it's like that face of Aerith showing up is literally the beginning of Remake. So the very closing cutscene of Final Fantasy VII is literally the beginning, is where the beginning of this series begins. And so that Aerith is waking up. She's like on the Aerith. But when Cloud meets her, Whispers are starting to fuck with her, taking away her memories. The reason on the other, I'll just throw out other hints of why this is a sequel. Since Sephiroth showed up early in the remake, that means that Cloud would have never met Aerith. So that's why that's why Sephiroth showed up at that moment, because he's trying to get Cloud to not meet Aerith ever.
Right, and then like the plot ghosts step in and like
and then
stop
the fate of the planet had to keep her ass in that spot so that Cloud could meet her, because at that point the Whispers are the planet's fate. Like fate needs everything to happen, and Sephiroth's just messing with everything. So he's messing with Cloud, and it's interesting. Big hint. At the end of the scene with Cloud and Sephiroth, the music that plays is the opening music to Advent Children at that moment. Yeah, as soon as that scene is over, that's what happens. And what's funny is that's the first scene where the original game is completely different from. It's the first part of the game where it completely starts to diverge. To where it's like, wait a minute, this is deviating really far, because it's like, wait, how is it that Cloud could meet? Because if it was just a remake, they would just have Cloud meet Aerith right there.
Right.
But because it's changing, no, the Whispers have to be messing with Aerith, because it doesn't make sense if this is a one-to-one remake that, he would have never met her. Mm-hmm. So that's another big hint. And there's also literally when you're fighting the Whispers at the end of Final Fantasy Remake, Cloud has a literal vision of, or Red 13 has a literal vision from it's an Advent Children scene because there's an Advent Children camera shot showing the flashback of Aerith being laid in the water by Cloud, and it's like this camera angle that's like above. They literally put the movie clip into the game. They literally put an Advent Children movie clip. I have to watch it. I'm pretty sure it's literally the same camera shot.
That's crazy. I did not notice that at all.
It's the same.
I'm expecting part 3 to have like multiple Advent Children scenes just like cut into it. So like that, but they already did that. That's crazy.
Yeah. Were you saying? Was someone else telling me? Were you telling me that? Someone told me that their dream of the next game is revisiting the Tifa in the church piano boss fight in Advent Children. And having that be a boss fight in the 3rd game.
That would be sick. No, that wasn't me, but that's sick. Yeah.
Okay, so another friend of mine told me that, I think a couple days ago, where he was like...
Yeah, I think that there's a chance that, like, a good chance that we play through some iconic scenes from Advent Children throughout part 3. Well, I don't think we'll play through, like, parts of Dirge. What I think they're going to do is I think they're going to remix... like take scenes from that and just make them happen earlier. So It's like with they'll just work the Dirge plot line into the battle with Wutai and it just kind of like make that like an ongoing thing that's happening like in parallel with the rest of the events.
Right. Yeah, that makes the most sense because Weiss appeared in the DLC. Nero appeared in the DLC, so they have to appear in the 3rd game.
Yeah.
And you know, are they just going to go back into hiding at the end of the 3rd game and have like a cliffhanger? It doesn't make sense to have some type of cliffhanger at the end of the story of Final Fantasy VII, because
it would make a lot. Yeah, and it would make a lot of sense to incorporate that stuff because you learn so much about Vincent's backstory through Dirge. So it's like if you just add that element of Vincent's like plot line and stuff into the actual like main story, like it would make the most sense because it would allow you to like have, because obviously you didn't learn much about him in the main game because he was optional. Right. So if they add all those things from Dirge earlier, like you can make it make sense. Like if you cut certain plot lines, remix other ones, you can make the Dirge storyline happen at the same time, and it would still make sense.
Right, and also just from a gameplay perspective, you need to have a Vincent section just to make the game even better. If you have a solo Vincent dungeon or section, that would be sick. So from just a gameplay perspective, that would be amazing because they do have, for both new characters that you get to control in this game, they have 2 completely separate dungeons. You have the Red 13 dungeon, where you control Red 13 the entire way. So they have a lot of Red 13 gameplay, and then they have a whole dungeon with Kate Sith, which is a new character. So that means that in the next game, they have to have a Vincent section and a Cid section. And so
they have a Yuffie dungeon too.
Well, yeah, Yuffie had one for the DLC, and Yuffie
have a Barrett dungeon. At the very beginning, you get like a dungeon for each of the characters, except for maybe Aerith.
No, Aerith does have it. Aerith has it in the city of Temple of the Ancients by herself.
That's true.
But one thing I wanted to say is this is why modern gaming can achieve greatness. Is this shot right here? Is you can animate faces. And it just like, you can see how sad Tifa looks, like how they designed that. And Cloud's just like nothing.
Yeah.
Just like a doll. It's just incredible how they're able to just make characters emote with acting, essentially.
Use words just with their faces. Yeah, that's a cool thing about modern video games. It's like we're finally there with facial capture.
We're finally able to have characters act. I think God of War 2018 was and Red Dead Redemption and stuff like that really pushed it, but we're at a point where it's like, yeah, this is pretty normal to be able to do this. Yeah, he's just like completely out of it. And so look, he's got the headache, right? He sees Aerith dying. He sees it. But Jenova comes in and snaps him out of it right here. Like, no, what are you doing thinking about that? And there she is. So as soon as he starts to see that, she shows up, which is interesting.
Yeah.
And also what someone made a whole video on is how weird and bizarre the music is here. It's not happy. It's in like a minor mode.
I'll see you off.
It's very creepy. You know, if you find out if Aerith is alive, the music would be in a major key.
Yeah,
at the very minimum. And so, I was watching a Maximilian Dude stream where he went and interviewed a musician, like a composer, and he said, "Hey, can you please go and look at this music and see if this is similar to the Genova theme?" And so the guy went in the MIDI in his computer and did all the notes and compiled them together, and he was like, "Okay, it's not the same, but it feels like it's an extension of the song, just melodically, like the piano part."
That's so cool.
So he's saying it's not the same. It's not like, oh, it's Genova theme in reverse, but it's kind of similar.
That's so cool.
So this piano part.
That's such a cool idea for Maximilian Dude to do.
So he was like, because he was listening, going, "There's something weird going on here." And he's like, "Is that like the Genova theme?" Because he thought, "Is that the Genova theme played backwards or something?" I'm not a musician, so he contacted a composer. So he went in and tried to write music around it in different. He like changed the key, did different octaves and stuff. But he was like, "Okay, it's not like lining up exactly, but it is oddly. It's like in the same mode as the Genova, because the Genova music is in a really weird mode. So apparently it's in a very similar mode, that piano part.
That's so cool.
But it is a very ominous music that's playing, which is, if you're supposed to feel good about this scene, it would be the music would be completely different. Like it's unsettling. And he's just walking away. He's totally. He's smiling and shit. Look how sad he is.
Yeah, no, it's a big juxtaposition because he is chipper. He is like, cool. Well, we did it. We saved the day. Look, Patrick, we saved the city.
Such a sad shot here.
Yeah.
That's such a good camera angle, and just but going back to how you can make graphics look like this, just the direction of the scenes, like they did, they showed exactly the emotion they wanted Cloud to show. The way he kind of looks at nothing and walks away. Because to me, it's like, it's obvious that she's really not there. Upon revisiting this scene over and over again, as far as between her dying and the end, I think this is totally brilliant, because even though it is jarring and we don't get to see the epic cinematic of the original Aerith scene, from a storytelling perspective, if this is true, and this is really truly not Aerith, it's brilliant storytelling. Mm-hmm. Because it's making the audience not believe in the obvious.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I didn't pick up on it like at first, like, because the first time you watch it, you're kind of confused. You're like, wait, is she alive? Is she dead? Like, what is Cloud actually seeing Aerith in the live stream, or like, I didn't pick up on the fact that it might be Genova until like a second time rewatching it and being like, okay, what's really happening here? Is it anytime I see a character talk to someone who's not there, I just immediately think of the Joker in Arkham Knight. It's like, is it just his subconscious, like, dealing with the guilt or trauma or whatever? So it's cool that
the way they showed his face here is just very perfect. As to like, just he's just in a daze. Mm-hmm. And what's interesting is what did Sephiroth say to the party when they first fight Genova on the boat? Is he talks about how Genova can take the image of things you love, those you hate, and those you fear. Mm-hmm. So it's three things. And what are potentially the three instances where Genova shows up? Sephiroth, is the one you hate. Glenn is the one Rufus fears, and Aerith is the one you love. Because what's interesting is the very next cutscene right here, where it's like, is that Genova? You literally see a Genova avatar in the very next scene. It's because I always feel like how it's kind of bizarre to have the Glenn scene after this. It's like, why would they, that's kind of a weird, jarring 180.
It's like Glenn, everybody's favorite character. You know Glenn.
Yeah, it's like what? Why am I watching it? Whenever I first played this, I was like, why am I watching a Glenn scene? What the fuck?
Yeah.
But from like you go from Aerith, you go to Glenn, and you go back to the end. It's like, oh, they're trying to tell you, like, hey, Sephiroth is using Glenn to start a world war. So how is it so wild to think that he's also using Aerith to mess with Cloud? And to have Aerith tell Cloud, you need to go to the Northern Crater and fight Sephiroth.
Wait, so did Sephiroth know Glenn? I know you said that like they give some Glenn backstory. Okay. You said they give some Glenn backstory in that mobile game.
Yeah, and there's apparently some dank storytelling. Apparently, as from a storytelling perspective, apparently the Sephiroth stuff in that game is peak. From what I've heard, apparently the storytelling is like peak storytelling as far as Sephiroth character building.
That's so cruel to lock behind a mobile game. I might have to download that.
Yeah, this is the scene right after. Right after that really bizarre scene, we get a really bizarre scene where Glenn shows up. And Glenn is like, oh, Glenn was controlled by Sephiroth. That's the point of Glenn. Yeah, he's everyone's favorite. I tell you, and now that I know the point of him being in the game, it's like, okay, this is interesting. But at no point in my first playthrough, I was like, every time Glenn showed up, I'm like, I rolled my eyes. I was like, oh, okay.
I was like, who is this guy? I was like, I don't know.
I kind of like rolled my eyes. I was like, okay. But upon like, okay, now I understand the point of his character being in this, because it's all it is Sephiroth is wanting the world to suffer. How does he suffer? He wants Shinra to go into world war with Wu Tai, which is completely different than the original game. Wu Tai and Shinra are not at war with each other. So in the original game, the war's over, and Wu Tai became a resort town, which is a little weird.
Right.
So it became like this place for rich people to go and visit. So they were like this honorable society that's been degraded to just become like a Costa del Sol. Right. So that was like kind of the contention with Yuffie, because Yuffie's like, no, I want to have honor. I'm going to get materia so that we can our Wu Tai can be strong again. But essentially at that point, Wu Tai is just like a resort town.
Yeah.
So that's why Johnny is going to have a hotel there. That's going to be Johnny. Johnny's going to
have a hotel in Wu Tai. That's so funny.
Yeah, that's what I think. I think Johnny's going to have maybe that's where, because that's where you fight, what's his name? Don Corneo. So maybe.
That's right. So, yeah, I forgot that's where he pops back up in the original.
So that's where Don Corneo, you fight him and kill him in the original game. So maybe you go and maybe Johnny will maybe Don Corneo has a place there, and I predict that Johnny will take over whatever Don Corneo shit is there. He'll become the hotel mogul.
That's funny, and it's like it's gonna kind of set up where like, hey, he's got like a relationship with Yuffie in this game. You know what I mean? Like they have like a meaningful scene together.
Yeah.
Where she clones him. You know, so it's like having that Yuffie connection.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Sense. Yeah,
that was the most bizarre, hilarious side quest. Was the Johnny's quest, the dual Johnnies?
Yeah.
Anyway, but yeah, this scene so intentional, because you think of how intentional, like the scene we saw the last time, where I noticed that there's two different voice acting dialogues with that Aerith talking to Sephiroth scene. Like everything is so intentional, and every scene, especially every cutscene, they really are thinking about, okay, what are we trying to say in the story, you know? So all the placement, because they could easily have put this scene way earlier in the game if they wanted to.
Right.
They could have put this at any point before. So they're like, no, we got to put this here. We got to specifically put this here. We could have put this anywhere before that, but so it's interesting how they put this right after the scene where Aerith shows back up. Oddly, you know.
Right.
It's a very bizarre scene. So at this point, now we're at, conflict with the planet, the weapons. Oh, one thing I was noticing, I think my gut is right. The color of these whispers are different. Because when Sephiroth was, after Aerith died, he had this purple glow, this Genova glow around him. So these whispers have that purple glow, and I'm pretty sure this is completely these are completely, because the remakes whispers, they're white. They have white. There's no purple glow on those.
I see.
So I'm pretty sure I'm right. I can always go back and fact check myself, but I'm pretty confident in that, because then I saw like several. It's like, yeah, there's always like a
purple's a Genova color. So
yeah.
But
So
I'll just play for a sec because I forgot about the scene.
I can start from the beginning here,
No, I've been catching it.
or with the audio.
They're digivolving. Interesting. Yeah, it kind of looks like they're about to combine into the emerald weapon that we recognize. Like, it kind of seems like they're like fusing into like the weapons that like we know from the original.
Yeah, it could be that. They could be just sort of like sort of sentinels, where they're sort of watcher weapons, kind of keeping an eye of everything. Yeah, that would be kind of cool if they merged together into like into a weapon. That'd be kind of sick. And then in my mind, it's pretty obvious from the scene, the Zack scene, that Zack has woken up in the main party's timeline. In my opinion. Oh my god, it's just too much. That's what I said. I'm playing my... Did he wake up in the other timeline?
Did I?
Because it looks
He woke up in our timeline. Nah, I couldn't have dreamt that. It all felt way too real.
It also looks like there's a hole in the roof, too, where the light's coming in. Because that's...
Well, there's always a hole in the roof.
Was there always a hole before he fell? And before Cloud...
I mean, regardless, like, people have been falling through that roof for, like, decades at this point. So, like, there's always a hole in the roof.
Yeah, that line of dialogue, two worlds can unite, doesn't mean they can't unite again.
But who's to say they can't unite again?
Interesting.
Roof. I think he woke up in the church. The main game's church.
That'd be cool. That'd be cool if we got Zack as like a main party member in the next game or something.
And you know what? You know what makes sense? Who has Zack have connection in Midgar that are antagonists? They're in the same spot now. Nero, potentially Genesis. So he might meet. So that could be a thing where he's in Midgar, and then maybe that stuff will start playing out.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Potentially.
Yeah, because like that canonically, like Genesis should be alive right now, because again, we're talking about like stuff that happens in Dirge happening sooner. At the end of Crisis Core, Deep Ground is the one that comes and collects Genesis's body. Mm-hmm. And then like the post-credit scene of Crisis Core, or like close to the end, or I don't know if it was post-credits or close to the end, a helicopter comes, collects his body. That is Deep Ground, and he's like kind of in a coma. Mm-hmm. But at the very end, the post-credit scene of Dirge of Cerberus, they I don't remember if it's like, yeah, it's like either Genesis comes back up, like Deep Ground like salvages his body, and I think uses the Genova cells in it to like do more experiments, because they don't have Sephiroth anymore. So I could see him popping back up and kind of resolving that plot line for good with all the Deep Ground stuff. Again, just like taking those things and making them happen earlier and like kind of changing them a little bit.
Right.
There's a server secret ending.
Released by Square Enix.
Let's see.
Or you're looking up the other endings?
No, I was just looking up like I want to see who comes to pick up who. Okay, yeah, at the very end, the secret ending of Dirge of Cerberus, Genesis comes to pick up Weiss's body.
I see.
And so it's like, yeah, so like canonically at some point, because that's the only time Genesis shows up in Dirge at all. So at some point at the end of Crisis Core, Deep Ground rescues Genesis and nurses him back to health, and he's just chilling somewhere between then and the very end of Dirge of Cerberus. So at any point he could have been nursed back to health and just doing something, unknown.
So does that
Imagine
mean
he's just like all the events of Final Fantasy VII are happening, and it's somewhere this guy is just reading poetry to somebody.
So does that mean that how they're going to do it is that they're going to have it be that Genesis shows up and then brings Weiss back to life, and because when Yuffie goes, because all he is he's used for data. He's not really alive. Yeah. He's like a digital.
In Dirge, Hojo uploads his consciousness into Weiss's body, and the whole game you think Weiss is like you're talking to Weiss or like you're interacting with Weiss or whatever, but it turns out it's just Hojo who uploaded his consciousness into his body. So I don't know if they're going to go that route this time, because Hojo's obviously still alive until like the big bombings, big scene at the end. So I'm not sure if they're still going to go that route, or if Genesis is going to come earlier and just like revive him somehow, like inject some Genova cells into him. Yeah, I'm curious to see how, because that's like, I feel like that does run the risk of it just being like a lot happening like all at once. Be like, if you're not already privy to who these characters are, I think it could also come off as like, okay, where did this come from? Who are these people? What's going on? You just introduced like 3 people
right
all of a sudden at the end in the part 3 of this game. So like I'm not sure. I think there's a lot of avenues they could go down, but I am confident that they're gonna have a satisfying conclusion to each of those things. I think it would make a lot of sense if like Zack is kind of like handling some things in Midgar. And maybe that when they go back to Midgar is when they meet back up with him, and maybe like Zack's kind of dealing with like some Deep Ground.
Yeah, I think the problem that I see that they're trying to solve is from a gameplay perspective. The majority of Final Fantasy VII at disc, like after Aerith's death, the majority of that you do not have Tifa and Cloud playable. There's a whole section where Tifa's nursing Cloud after the Northern Crater. And so there's a whole section of the game where you literally will not be able to control Cloud and Tifa. Because since it's a the remake trilogy, that section of the game probably is going to be like what, 50 hours, even though it's one, how much gameplay are we going to miss of like we're not going to play, also we're not going to have Aerith.
Right.
Tifa and Cloud. So how do they combat that? Well, if Zack is in the party, that will alleviate the fact that
Cloud, yeah.
So maybe right after the Northern Crater, at somehow Zack. I'm trying to think how that would work. Where would Zack show up? Zack could potentially show up in Junon, because Junon's really close to Midgar, because after the Northern Crater, the party is going to get executed in Junon publicly. They're live televising their execution, and then while that's happening, Weapon shows up and starts destroying Junon. They fire the cannon. Tifa escapes, and they fly off in the high wind. So maybe in that scene, somehow Zack is in Junon, maybe. Because maybe because the events of the Northern Crater is going to be the weapons are everywhere. What? Oh, weapons attacking Junon. Zack's probably like, I got to go Junon or something. Maybe that's how he shows up. Because there's weapons. Like, oh, the weapon's probably going to attack blah, blah, blah. So maybe they'll have him enter there. Yeah. Because, yeah, you do need to have a gameplay replacement with Cloud. And so since Zack is seemingly coming back, that would make sense for Zack to be controllable for most of the game until Cloud comes back.
You do go back to Midgar at some point. I know, like, you go back for the big climactic scene where it kind of gets destroyed, but I think you were able to. I don't remember if there's a story reason to, but you are able to go back before then, I think.
Yeah, and yeah.
So I wonder if they're going to make a story reason for you to go back to Midgar, and that's where you're going to pick up Zack.
Sure, that could work.
Because so, and if we're talking about, like, if we're starting to kind of get into also like theories for part 3 and what we want for part 3 and stuff, something that I really want out of Remake that they didn't give us, and I kind of think it makes sense in hindsight. It was disappointing at the time. I kind of think it makes sense in hindsight. Like, going forward, like, especially if we're going to go back to Midgar, I really want a fully explorable Midgar. I want to be able to go to all 7 sectors, both top and bottom. I want to be able to, like, what does Sector 4 look like? Is it like the fashion district or the business district or what? Like, I just want to be able to go. I want Midgar to be more open world, not like totally open. I don't need it to be like literally like 1-to-1 the size of it, but I just want to be able to go to every sector, both top and bottom.
Right.
Obviously, destroyed sectors non-excluded.
Right. Yeah. That's actually the only thing they need to make. Well, it's going to be still a lot of work. They have to make Mediel, they have to make Wutai, and Rocket Town. And so, and then Midgar. Everything else they could pretty much keep the same, exact same assets, exact same layout. That's pretty much all.
There's a couple other things. Is that Bone Village, or is that what Mediel is? Do you
remember? They technically kind of removed Bone Village because you never. So in the original game, you go to Bone Village to get to the ancient Forgotten City where Aerith dies.
No, they're gonna add that. There's no way they're cutting it. We're just gonna go there later.
So Bone Village could be. Where Bone Village is, because they moved to the location of the Temple of the Ancients and then the City of the Ancients. Because that's in north. So Bone is right before the snowy part, so maybe they'll add that. Maybe that'll be the beginning of the next game. Yeah. Now, this is one thing I want to ask you. How do you think... Because it makes total sense how you start the second game with the flashback. That makes total sense of you start the next game with the Sephiroth flashback. I think everyone kind of guessed that was going to happen. With this one... Even though they could literally just start the game on the way up to the Northern Crater, but typically with the first 2 games, it starts with a very engrossing set piece. Because the flashback with Sephiroth is a set piece. There isn't really a set piece that's a story-driven that's in that section because the Aerith death, and after that, it's pretty much not really a whole lot going on until they actually get to the Northern Crater. So do you think do you think it's going to start like that, or do you think they're going to add a set piece to be the beginning of the game?
Yeah, I don't know. I kind of always assumed we're going to like crash, like it's going to start with like a crash again, like the helicopter's just going to like start malfunctioning, you're going to kind of go down, or the tiny Bronco or whatever. I kind of figured we'd crash near Rocket Town and we just do that whole thing. But I mean, you could also maybe we crash like in the Northern Crater or whatever. I think I'll start with a crash. I don't know how they do like the set piece unless it's like unless we start with
Start with Rocket Town.
Unless we want to do an Uncharted 2 where we start halfway through the game, like maybe during maybe in a battlefield. Like if you want to really like subvert expectations, like you start in a battlefield between Wutai and maybe it's like the grasslands, but it's not the grasslands the way you remember them. This is like a full on like there's trenches and there's like cannons and there's like tanks and stuff, and you're kind of like parties like separated and like trying to run through the battlefield, and then cannon fires in front of you, you get knocked back, and then it fades. It's like 3 weeks earlier or whatever, and you're back in the tiny Bronco. Like they might just do like an Uncharted 2 where we start halfway through the game and then we flash back. I can see them doing that, but I don't know. I think there's simultaneously it's like it feels like there's not enough for part 3, but also feels like there's too much for even one more part, because there's not that much of the actual game itself left. I mean, there is, but there is still like a lot left that hasn't happened. But also there's all of the Wutai stuff that they now got to add in. There's all of the Advent Children and Dirge stuff they got to add in. There's potentially all of revisiting of Midgar. There's the being able to, I'm sure you're gonna be able to fly the Highwind. And what I think a lot of that land that you kind of just fly over that's not explorable in this one, I think you're gonna be able to go back to the Highwind and fly around freely and have little pockets where you can land and explore extra caves and things like that. I think there's gonna be new islands. In the original there was tiny little islands that you could get to after you got the Chocobo that could run on water, or after you got the Highwind. I can't remember. I think those islands are going to do some extra exploring stuff. You return to Fort Condor. In the original, we still got to do that. Fort Condor, you can see it out in the distance, but you can't go there.
That's right.
There's the submarine. There's the whole underwater sequence.
There's so much. Yeah, there's so much content. Now, one thing I will say is you don't really think about it with the original Final Fantasy VII, but other than Midgar, the Midgar section, the meat of all the plot happens after Aerith's death. Because not a lot. Midgar has a lot of plot, a lot of dialogue. But after the flashback sequence with Cloud, and they all the way up to the Aerith death, there isn't really a lot of actual meaty plot that happens, because you still don't know anything about Sephiroth's and the intentions. You only find that out after, once you get to the Temple of the Ancients, then the plot starts picking up. Because as soon as you, other than the snowboarding stuff, when you get to the Northern Crater, it's just never-ending plot. It's just one set piece, and then the weapons, you get the Highwind, and then you're gonna get executed. Yeah. Then it goes from Tifa going back to Cloud. Then it goes to they're having to get the big materia. So there's this whole train sequence. There's a Coral train sequence where they have to have a fight on a train that crashes into Coral. There's all this. There's so much shit that they got to put in there. It's gonna be insane. It's the submarine.
Yeah. I think that part 3 is going to feel like a 100-hour roller coaster. It's going to be, it's going to be it might be longer. It might be 200 hours, but it's going to, regardless of how long it is, it's going to feel like it went by in 15 minutes, because it's going to be nonstop.
There's so much shit. And then it's you go back to Midgar.
Backstory and Vincent's backstory in this. I went from going into this before playing part 2, thinking that oh man, there's gonna be nothing left for part 3, to thinking there is too much shit for just part 3. I don't know how they're gonna do it all in one more game. So I think it's gonna be crazy.
It's gonna be immense. It's hard to think a game would be even more immense than Rebirth, but it kind of has to be. They kind of do have to. They gotta do the high, because there's so much stuff that they gotta make. Now, luckily, I'm so impressed playing this game. One thing is the development cycle between the first and
yeah, they made it so quick.
I can't believe that a game like this exists between 4 years of the first game.
Yeah.
And it's because they had a vision back in 2018, 17, where they fired the original developer that was going to make this, and they're like, no, we're going to do it ourselves. And they have the original writers. Nomura was the director of the first one. They have the original people who made the original game, who made Crisis Core, making the new trilogy. So they're all on. I feel the reason this game works is because this is made with passion. They have vision. They have people who are advocating for all this stuff to be like. So I think in the Square Enix world, the people who are writing this, Nomura, the writer Nojima, they all have they're big leaders in Square Enix. I think the director of this game got promoted into a very high-level executive role in Square Enix. So all these people they're not just really talented creators. They're high up in the food chain on a corporate level. And that's very important for game development, to have someone with a creative vision be on a very high level in the company. That's why probably The Last of Us is the way it is, because Druckmann is very high up in the food chain in that company.
Yeah.
And he directed and wrote those two. So he is able to really do his creative vision in that game. So it's very important for that to exist. Like Miyazaki for FromSoft, he's part of creative, but he's essentially FromSoft. He is the guy.
He's also CEO,
and he's also the creative force behind it. So that's why those games are all great, is because they have him as the sort of the big wig, the creative big wig that he has say. Because that it's crazy to think FromSoft is Bandai Namco, dude. So for them to have, Elden Ring is Bandai Namco. Elden Ring, that's
Namco Bandai is just a publisher. They don't own.
Yeah, but it's really interesting how much creative freedom they had with that game, given that it's Bandai Namco, and I think that's because they have people high up in FromSoft being like, no, this is how we're going to do it.
Right.
And so I think it's very important for that to exist. In order for a game like this to exist, is you have to have the creative person in a very high level role advocating for the game, because you have to have an advocate. Every great game has to have there's always like, there's an advocate somewhere on a high level being like, no, we got to do it like this.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
I think that's why. And they even said that, I think there was an interview where they said the development of the third game is going great. And they said the same thing about the second game. Like a couple of years ago, they said, oh yeah, Rebirth's going great. We're on track. They said the same thing about the third game. They're right on track. They're not missing the beat. So it's like, all right.
Confident, dude. Confident, yeah.
I joked that we might see the third part of Rebirth before Kingdom Hearts 4. That's
That's hilarious.
But, okay, so we are at the closing ending cutscene. And do you have thoughts before I start going on Yap Fest?
No, I really want to. I've been waiting to hear your take.
So I don't want to feel like I'm just going to be the only one talking here.
No, I want to hear. I want to hear your thoughts on it, your breakdown on it first, and then I'll interject if I.
Okay, yeah, I did make a 20-30 minute video a few days after this game came out where I just talked about this cutscene. So nice. I was like, because I was like, okay, I see other opinions about this. I wanted to get my raw, so I just turned the microphone on and just looked at the cutscene, just like, okay, what can I possibly see? And so, just when it comes to what I feel when it comes to a scene like this, especially when it's such a confusing, you're just so confused. What the hell is going on? A scene like this needs to be directed in such a specific way, especially when you're introducing this Aerith coming back stuff. To me, every shot in this it is intentional with in one way or another, whether it's through themes, whether they're trying to tell you something or give you hints. But to me, this cutscene is directed very specifically. And there's a lot of visual elements, not just stuff that characters say, but there's visual elements that are very like, that's interesting. Now, this may be dumb, but the one thing that was noticeable is like, wow, this is a cloudy day. It's a pun, like cloud, his vision's clouded. It's a cloudy day. I don't know if it means anything. I just thought, oh, it's a cloudy day. Interesting. He's sitting on a bed of yellow flowers. Aerith's all about the yellow flowers. There's yellow flowers in the church, and so he's sitting on a bed of yellow flowers. It's very interesting how it's like, okay, it's yellow. Flowers at the church are yellow. So he's sitting on a hill, the yellow flowers, and the first thing that he sees is this empty materia. And so the materia is empty, but Cloud is looking at it almost lovingly in this shot. He's almost looking at it very lovingly, like, wow. He's transfixed. And so my interpretation of the scene is he is almost believing that the materia is full. The way he's looking at it, he's almost seeing like, oh, he sees Aerith, so he's seeing like this materia, even though it's empty, it's like he's looking, in his mind, he's looking at a full materia. And so he is in full...
It's like he's hallucinating her being there. He's hallucinating that the materials...
Yeah, the materia is because it's connected with Aerith, and so when he looks away, because he's filling himself, his ideas into the materia, and then when he turns his head, he's filling his ideas into the real world where he's having Aerith appear. So I feel like it's intentional that they want the scene where it's like, okay, we're going to show the audience that Cloud is looking at this empty materia and transposing it with the very next camera shot. He's filling up the world with Aerith, who's not there. Because the party's here. And then as soon as he looks away from the materia that he's transfixed on, Aerith shows up. So he's like looking, and now it's doing the same thing he does with the materia that he's showing up. And the reason I have this idea of this materia idea is that there's a reflection on the materia in the next shot. Because at this point he's looking, Aerith only shows up when he's looking in this direction, essentially. So even when Aerith shows up next to Red 13, Cloud is still looking in this direction. So while Aerith shows up, Red 13 was like, Aerith? Cloud's still looking over here in this particular direction. Is this camera shot after this? I forget. It's a very bizarre reflection with this materia. It's like, and it's like that emote, it's kind of funny because it's almost like, oh yeah, that's how Aerith is. That's how Aerith acts. It doesn't feel natural. It's like
right, yeah.
It's sort of like, oh, it's like oh, my Aerith is jovial Aerith, a part of the party.
Right, yes.
And so it's almost like an imagination. It's not like it's not an authentic.
Yeah, it's like an Aerith impression. It's like
right. It's an emo. It's like emo Aerith.
Emote Aerith.
It's like
Aerith.
It's like So here she is. She's like, oh, I'm care so much about the party. And then what's interesting is after this, Aerith immediately goes and looks at Cloud as if to say, like, look, I care. Look, I'm here. I'm consoling your friends.
I'm helping.
Yeah, this is the part that. So I can see how people would say, no, this is really Aerith because of this. But I genuinely think that's why they showed the Hojo flashback. To show that, no, Red 13 was experimented on by Hojo, so its chances are he also has Genova cells in him. It is very possible. But the counter argument to the argument that this is not really Aerith is this scene right here. It's like, well, if this is really Genova, then why is Red 13 censor? Because obviously, because Red 13 knows everything. So why is that? So that's the counter argument to that is that no. He said, "This is not Genova. You're a psycho. That's not my Aerith. My Aerith's not Genova." So yeah, she sees Aerith. Here, let me get the sound here. And then immediately she looks at Cloud. Like, look, I'm consoling the party. And then he goes right back to the materia and she disappears. And then we go to a camera shot of this. So I think this may be goofy, but I swear to God, this is intentional. His head is in the materia. His physical head is in there. His mind, he's filling the materia with his mind. And it's covered in clouds. Why would you decide? Why would you decide to make this a cloudy day? Right?
Yeah.
Your eyes are clouded. You're filling up this empty materia, the world, and your memories. You're filling the memories with Aerith in this empty shell of materia. You are putting your mind into this thing. This is all coming from him. It's not Aerith. It's an empty materia. Aerith is not present. Cloud is filling this void with himself. And so that's how I feel with this particular shot. It's very odd that they like, oh, why would you show a close-up of this empty materia? Why not just because he turns it too. So they want to visually have it so where you see his reflection.
So
because
cool.
he turns it to where you can see him.
Yeah.
Because if you just want to show empty materia, just show an empty materia. Why he turns it so that way the audience can see his reflection into it.
Dude. Amazing.
So because it's empty materia. If your storytelling direction was just to show an empty materia, you wouldn't put that effort to... You know how complicated it is to animate a reflection off of that thing? Like how much effort it is. Like, oh, we want Cloud's head to be reflected off the thing just for kicks. To show off this empty... They could have just easily just animated a... because someone pointed out that pre-rendered cutscenes like this, there's not like... a character back there to there's no physics to like reflect a character. It's as a pre-rendered. This is like a rendered cutscene, so it's not like a game where you have like clouds there and you're using the physics to reflect it. No, that has to be visually created there. They have to make that 3D image there. They can't use the environment around the area to make that. They have to, unless they did that, but they have to.
Reflections are insanely hard to do. Like they've got a lot easier, but like reflections are like, if you put a real reflection in a game, you're like it's no easy feat. So it's like always it's still very intentionally done. Like it's gotten easier with ray tracing, but like even ray tracing is like, depending on what you're ray tracing is like still pretty intensive. So it's like even now, like even in games, like usually they're pretty intentional about what actually casts a real reflection and what doesn't.
So I think the reason you can't see is because his hand is blocking his glove is blocked. That's why it's dark. But they could easily have shown it to where it's like in his hand empty without his reflection. So because like he has to turn it right here. I think So that's actually, that's probably really difficult to make this shot. Just from a technical, like how difficult is this shot right here?
I'm not sure.
Like a fisheye shot?
Yeah.
Oh, and the light to dark?
Sick shot though.
Is another thing. It's going from dark cloud to light cloud.
Oh.
And so he's having this materia in the black materia. So I wonder if that's also a visual element, or it's like, there's a light and a dark to him, but essentially he is confused. Clouds are surrounding him, and he's filling up the void with himself. Because that's the whole point of the character. He's filling the void. His whole character is this image. He's a empty shell lost. He's a lost person in an empty shell. He has no sense of self, and that's his whole character arc. Is he finally finds himself, and he just finds out that by the end he's just kind of like he's that soldier kid.
Yeah,
he's a kid. He's not a soldier. He has it's like the teenage angst character. The end of Final Fantasy VII, he has like a borderline childish line of dialogue, but it's very endearing whenever they go fight Sephiroth. He says, "Let's mosey," at the end. And then Sephiroth's like, "Come on, man. You got to think of something more badass to say." Like at the end, it's like, "Let's mosey." But it's sort of like, but it's in character because he's himself at that point because he's just like some teenager. He's like an awkward kind of like teenager. He's like, "All right, guys, let's mosey." And Sid's like, "No, dude, you got to be more badass than that." I was like, "Okay, let's move out."
Guys, let's mosey on out of here.
Right. So that's like who he is. Truly, he's just like an awkward teenager. He's not a soldier. So he's completely lost at this point. And I think visually that's what they're trying to say with that shot right there. And it's interesting. You go from that, and then you pick up. We talked about this last time. I have no idea how he has the black materia right now.
I think it just changes. I think like that thing will just like take on like I think it's kind of gonna be a reflection of. I think it's the same materia. I think it's just gonna kind of be a reflection of. You think the black materia is filling up the empty one? Yeah. Now there someone did bring that up. I think there is audio to indicate that he's juggling two materials in his pocket though. Oh, okay. Maybe, but that would be sick. But there is, I think, some audio. Oh, okay. When he goes in his pocket to like he's juggling around different materia. But okay. That is because also the materia is smaller and then the black materia is huge. That's true. Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Yeah, there's a sound of glass touching each other, like two glass. Okay, all right. Like glass balls touching each other. Now that would be pretty sick though. I'm okay with that though. And then he's like, right. Now one evil beyond my understanding. Now, one theory that was talked about is like, so look at how his eye is reflected. There's a red speck on his eye. So there was a big argument online whether the same red speck is showing in Aerith's eyes later. Like people were zooming in on her eye in one line dialogue, and there was like a little red speck on her eye for like a split second. Which is the same spec that shows here. Just with another clue. So we can look at that. Right. We can zoom in later. But yeah, this is just... The reunion. Oh yeah, he's lost it. Hey, you coming or what? Yeah, one sec. Now there's no clouds right now. Interesting. On this side. Maybe he has clarity of what he's doing. So, yeah, he's messed up because he's in so denial of reality. It's interesting. He's fully accepting that Aerith is here, right? But he's in total denial of the Terran reality. You have to promise not to look up. Oh right, yeah. So it's like an opposite. He's like, yeah, Aerith is here, but this Terran reality I see. Oh yeah, don't bother looking at that, guys. That's fake. So. Oh right, he's like, don't look up. Now someone noticed that this tear here is a visual element in the OG Final Fantasy. Did you see that? Mm-hmm. In the live stream, really cool. In the live stream where Tifa goes and saves them, this thing is in the bottom of that area. Yeah, it's really cool. So I wonder if at this point Cloud is just so in tune with the multiple realities, he sees
He's seeing Genova, but he's also seeing all these timeline things happening. So I wonder if this is probably just an ominous thing of like, oh yeah, this world is now starting to end.
Mm-hmm.
The world is starting to end, and this is maybe the planet's thing of like, oh yeah, we're about to get toast, you know. So he's seeing this tear, because this tear shows up in the Zack scenes. This is what's in the sky that everyone can see, but Cloud for some reason can only see this. So he's seeing some shit. But I think it's kind of interesting how he's in denial that this is even there to the party, because he's saying to the party, don't look up.
Don't look up.
Well, now I gotta look.
Such a creepy line of dialogue that he says here.
Fine, but don't let it get to you.
Don't let what get to me?
It's not real. Just an illusion.
Meta? A meta line of dialogue? It's not real, it's just an illusion. Like, what was Aerith then, dude?
Right.
That was real? But yeah, I love the crazy talk. It's so unsettling in this part, because this is like, don't look up, don't let it get to you. All right, let's go to the Northern Crater. It's just, this scene is very unsettling.
Now
I love
let's
it.
go get Sephiroth. He's hiding up north.
North.
Trust me, he is. Soldier's intuition.
Oh, yeah? Better hope you're right.
Barrett and Tifa are like, fuck.
All right, fine. We trust you.
All right,
Oh, dude.
we're screwed.
That's great.
Riding on this. And that's a load you'd best be ready to carry.
No heavy loads. We're close to capacity as it is.
Don't worry about me. I can handle it.
Yeah, Barrett's like, yeah, right, dude. Tifa doesn't even talk to him. Cloud, Nar, chill.
Take care.
Now, all right. Now we're getting more in the weeds here. Okay. My face is in the way in the scene, and in the VOD too. So he's turning his head here, and the camera pans this way, or this way. I'll have to mirror it. Panning this way, and there's nobody there. And by the time Aerith walks into the scene, it's like, well, Aerith should have appeared like where she. So so I feel it's intentional that the camera's panning. No one is there as he's turning his head, and he's saying, "Are you gonna?" You know, he's talking to Aerith, obviously. But it's interesting in this shot, you don't see Aerith until the next shot where she walks in. So it's almost like, oh yeah, we're turning the camera, no one's there. And then we get to the other shot, and she appears. So it could be she's off camera, but it's kind of odd that she'd be off camera in this shot, because it's kind of jarring editing.
It's like the spacing doesn't add up.
It's spacing that, so it's like a jarring editing to go from this shot, because it's almost like you might as well just go to the next shot to show her walking. So they wanted to show this shot for some reason, of him turning his head like way far in the back. He turns his head, and he's literally, are you going to be okay going back? And there's literally no one in front of him as he's saying that line.
You okay getting back?
And then she's like right there. He's like right there. Look how close she is. And then there's another camera shot after this that's really weird. Because she's like right in his face.
And if I said I wasn't?
If I said, oh, this is a callback to him walking. So the interpretation that I can think of is why this would be Genova, because this is like, well, this is obviously Aerith, right? She talks like Aerith, right? one interpretation I have is that Genova is only able to appear in the memories of her, can only appear as memories, essentially. So the reason she's saying, all these lines of dialogues are literally just callbacks to earlier parts of the game. It's not really saying anything new. So like this is a callback to him walking her to Sector 7 in the OG game, because it's like, are you going to be okay getting back home? And that's where they're in the park, and then they see Tifa go to the wall market. So this is literally a callback to this. And then when she says, don't worry, it's like a second home, she literally says that while that's a callback to the Shinra tower where they're in her room, where she tells the party, yeah, this is my room. This is like my second home, because that's where she lived. She didn't live.
Right.
She lived in the house, and then she basically, her room is technically the room in Shinra with all the pictures. So this is a callback to that line. All these are callbacks.
Right.
I guess. But what if something happens?
Then I'll send up smoke. That's a callback to... Yeah, the send up smoke line is a callback to them calling Sid.
Then I'll
Right.
send up smoke.
Thanks.
Okay, this, I don't know if I'm reaching, but this camera shot, it looks like he's not even looking at her. I don't know, does it, how do you feel like, it feels like he's looking into thin air, like to her right. It's almost like a blank stare. I don't know if that's intentional, if I'm reaching.
Yeah, I can't really tell. I don't know. I even if he was, I don't know what that would mean. So
Like, just it just seems like his eyes, he's not really looking at her. He's sort of looking at nothing. I don't know if I'm reaching. Now, one thing I will say that is a antithesis that I noticed is that her clothes are blowing in the wind here. This is the one anti-argument that I can think of. Her clothes are blowing here. But in the scenes before, when they're working on the engine, her clothes didn't move. But in this shot, her clothes move. So
is it because the propellers? Is it because the propeller is on?
Yeah, the propeller's on here, so that's why her clothes are blowing in the wind. And there's a previous shot where she's standing in front of them working on the ship, and there's this big smoke blew past them, and all the other characters, the wind blew by them, but her clothes or nothing moved. Her hair didn't move or nothing. It was like a ghost. Mm. But this part, she's not a ghost. She's like there. So that's the only I don't know if that's a thing they sort of didn't think about, but I thought that was a little odd. That in the ghost scene, her clothes were moving, but this part is not. Maybe this is just, at this point, such a figment in Cloud's mind that it's just like, it's as if she was there, maybe. But I did feel that was kind of an odd difference to show, like, okay, she's obviously like a ghost in that other scene, and now she's like kind of here.
Huh.
But I guess it would visually look kind of awkward if she was just standing there and nothing was moving. Maybe it would be too obvious at that point. Be like, wait, what is that? What is? There's wind.
I think no matter what, I think no matter what the audience knows, she's not there. It's just whether she's not there because Cloud is seeing her through the live stream, or she's not there because it's Genova appearing to him.
Yeah.
But I think either way, it's like obvious she's not like literally there.
Right. And this is why I was like, wait a minute. Why is she telling him to go stop Meteor and go to Sephiroth? That's like the total opposite of everything that she said before this point. Because whenever she was in the forest, she's like, don't worry about Sephiroth. I'll deal with Sephiroth. And whenever they did the trials, we can't just fight Sephiroth. We got to do something more than that. It's about, power friendship or something. And so this is the only part in the game where Aerith is like, yes, you need to go confront Sephiroth. I'll leave the rest to you. Yeah, you go beat up Sephiroth.
Definitely Genova talking.
And so it's like, well, You know, literally the best thing that they could do right now is literally just hang out in this fucking bed of flowers forever. Like, if they just stay here, that's it. You close the credits, dude. Like, there's not, like, if Cloud just was like, you know what, I'm not going to fight Sephiroth anymore. I'm just going to retire and go, like, then it's like, all right, that's the end of the game. But it's just very interesting how this is the one scene where Aerith is opposite. Where it's like, yeah, you go do the thing.
Yeah, no, I think this is definitely Genova. I think that Cloud is. I think that going into the next one, you know, Cloud is the rift between him and the party is going to grow wider. I think he's going to be the only one hallucinating, and I think this is going to drive a bigger rift between him and the party until it eventually gets resolved.
Yeah, and yeah, people are saying there's a red glint here, but it's like really hard to see.
I watched it back a couple times. I couldn't see the red glint, but
it's like it looks. I think it's a little bit of a stretch. I mean, it kind of. Maybe they just threw it for like a frame. Maybe here. Yeah, it's I don't know. That might be a stretch, but it would be it. Yeah, I people were like, I see it. I'm like, I don't really see it. It'd be kind of cool, but also, yeah, I'm not too sure on that. But yeah, people are saying there's a little red glint, and the people are saying, well, the glint is the ship. Well, it's like, well, if they intentionally did it, that's probably what it means.
I'll leave the rest to you. Good luck.
Leave the rest to you, and then
Aerith,
yeah, this camera angle.
I will stop Sephiroth.
I will stop Sephiroth.
yeah.
Pause. It's like a villain camera shot. Like the turn around, pause at the feet, like, yes, gotcha, bitch. Yeah, you do that. Promise?
You promise?
Yeah, so it's just a little bizarre, you know? Little.
Yeah, that's Genoa. I'm convinced that's Genoa.
That add more confusion? I believe that this is Aerith.
What?
I think that this Aerith right here is Aerith.
Wait, what?
This one right here. This is
Why
different.
would that one be Aerith?
Because this is in the closing credits, the shot. And she has like a mournful look on her. She's like kind of a mournful look on her face.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
It's interesting how this camera. I gotta mute this. I don't know. I just kind of feel like maybe. Oh, there's like the yellow flower. No promises await. It's interesting how like they said, you promise? Yeah. And then right after that, it's no promises await.
No promises.
It's like, yeah, don't buy into that, dude.
Yeah.
And
cool.
we'll look at the last piece of info here with this. Yeah, because they showed this was pointed out like a couple weeks after the game came out. Someone noticed this. Yeah, every single cutscene is shown in the credits, except when you get to the end of the game. Yeah, right here. They skip everything. Did they show the Glenn cutscene? So they do the boss fight. They do all the boss fights. They do the Zack scenes. Zack. They do the Aerith Sephiroth boss fight. And then they have the Aerith disappearing cutscene. And then they have the Zack thing. Okay? Then, oh wait. This is the last scene. See how weird that is?
Oh yeah.
So he picks up her body, but I don't think they show her waking up. Does it scroll by before that? Yeah, they don't show her waking up in the credits. They just show him looking at. So it just cuts off as soon as she wakes up, because that's like Genova stuff. It's the unreliable narrator at that moment. Everything is an unreliable narrator, so it's all blank. You know how weird that is? So it's blank. Glenn scene.
Okay, all right, yeah. Glenn confirmed.
Glenn, the weapon fight. Isn't that bizarre? The Zack scene.
interesting. That's really cool. That's a cool thing to it.
Then the dude, everything else.
Yeah.
And then I think after this, then another blank, because they're not showing the cloud on looking at the materia. They skip that. So it's more black. And then it's like the final shot of Aerith looking away at the plane. It's like, okay, they're not showing any of that.
Whoa.
So I wonder if it's Genova, but what if it's like none of that even happened?
Whoa.
What if everything up from that in the closing credits, like every line of dialogue, all that confusion, it's like maybe all it is it's just simply all that stuff from that point on in the game just simply never occurred. Like all the scenes that are blanked out. So the next game could totally retcon everything that happened at the end, because maybe it just the simple answer is none of that even happened. The truth the truth was never shown at that whole ending is never happened.
Dude, cool.
So yeah, it's weird because the closing credits is Aerith here. So you know what they could do is they could start the game with that cutscene, but it's like Aerith is trying to reach Cloud, but she can't. Maybe that's a thing that they could do, where it's like it redoes the scene, and Aerith is trying to, maybe Aerith is being held back by Genova, and she's trying to reach Cloud. She's desperate from the live stream to contact him, but Cloud is just gone at that point. So I wonder if they could add that too. So they replay these scenes, but with the perspective of actual Aerith being like, "No, Cloud, don't go, don't go." So she's right here going like, "No, you guys are going. Like, why? Come back."
Yeah.
So they could
all
do
the scenes in black are like completely different, or like reshot, or told from a different perspective at the beginning.
Like, how heartbreaking would it to be Aerith after she dies trying to reach Cloud, but she can't. Like, she's trying like reach him, so it's just like she's in a void and she just can't contact. She's desperately trying to change what's going on. It's like, don't go to the northern crater, and trying to don't do that. And she's seeing like herself appear as the Genova herself appearing. Yeah. That would be kind of brutal if they did that. But yeah, that's the only cutscene they show. Everything else is from Cloud's perspective, and they blacked it out.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Anyway, I rest my case.
Dude, that's sick. Thank you. That really, like, I've been waiting this whole time for like your explanation of the ending to give a better context, because like I kind of got it, but like this really like helps, put everything into full perspective. So
I'm glad I had no one to yap about this, dude. You know how I played this game and I couldn't talk to anybody, dude.
Yeah,
I was in pain for. Eventually, I knew a couple people that beat it, and I was able to like kind of talk about it. But one of my best friends has not played the game yet, and it's like, dude, I need you to beat this, and so that way we can talk about this, because this is just like, it's absolutely incredible.
Yeah, that
they made a remake to Final Fantasy VII, and because the whole game is like a mystery. Playing it's a mystery.
Yeah, it's such a cool idea.
And so it's like, how do you even get to that same level that the original game? How do you even reach the original game's impact when everyone knows what happens, right?
Yeah. No, it's genius.
How do you even, because everyone knows, like, okay, Zack is Zack, and Cloud's like, okay, pretend to be Zack. Like, everyone knows that the spoilers of the original 7 at this point. I mean, if you played Crisis Core, it's like that's a spoiler to the original game. And, you know, how do you add mystery to a game that is definitive aspect is its mystery? Like the original game, that's like the crowning achievement is the whole mystery of Cloud. And so how do you even do that again and add more mystery? So somehow they made it to where the game has even more mystery. At this point in the game, there's even more mystery and intrigue than the original game at this point in the story. So they added even, they amplified the feeling of what in the hell is going on even more. It's insane.
So cool.
So they were
cool, dude.
Able to reverse engineer this idea of doing a sequel to add just be like, yeah, we're going to add more mystery and add more confusion to the player, because that's what you went through when you're playing the original for the first time. So it's just like,
so cool.
This is why this is like my 3rd favorite game of all time, dude, or 2nd, or something. I don't know.
I love it. I can't wait for the 3rd one. I think like all together, this is gonna be like a top 10 trilogy. This is fantastic.
It's
thank you for talking for 16 hours.
Dude, a pleasure of mine, dude. I'm glad we did it. I gotta figure out how to even tackle posting this. I don't know.
I'm glad that's your job and not mine.
I think it's easiest to post this one first, like the ending, because we just talked about the ending here.
I know it takes forever to cut down something this long, so whenever you get around to it, I feel like this is evergreen content until the 3rd one's out.
Oh yeah, this is I'm marketing it as the longest Rebirth podcast of all time, and because so I swear to God, this has to be. There's no way.
Yeah, there's no way
people have spent how many hours total? What, 16 hours?
I think so.
15.
Like
there's no way people have had like 15 hours worth of streaming talking about this damn game.
I know. It's so funny.
I think the longest I've seen is 4 hours.
Yeah.
That's the longest, and that was like one day. That was just one day, dude. So so everyone thank Drake to being a part.
Thank you guys for
not only talking about Rebirth, but this is like the first stream I've done in this style of having like a podcast format. So I really appreciate you being the first person to enter this
Thanks for having
experimental.
This is a lot of fun. I'm down to do more. We'll have another chat, just like a Discord call where we talk about like doing more of these.
Thanks everyone for watching. I want to thank Drake for coming onto the streams and discussing Rebirth and all the theories. It was awesome. And be sure to follow his channel. I have all of his socials linked. And also, I stream every single day on Twitch. I play classic games. I play RPGs. I play everything. So be sure to come on the Twitch stream and say hi. I'll see you guys later.